There are two ways to create an order: using Strapi's dashboard, we created menu items this way, or using an API. This time we need to create a new order from our app, so we have to use an API. Let's see how we can create a new order using the API. I'm going to create a new file in VS Code, and I'm just going to have a curl command in here. Ignore all of those warnings. We need to make a post request to API orders with authorization of our bearer, with an API token with a content type of application JSON, and we will send a data. Remember how Strapi usually returns us ID and then data. This is kind of the same way, but in reverse. We do not want to tell Strapi data at which ID to create, but we do want to give Strapi some data to save. And in the data field, we will give our customer's name, similar to how we had a name in our order. We will give our customer's phone, which is just a string, and we will give a data. Since data is a JSON object, it can be anything. For our use case, we will be expecting that the data is going to be an array of objects, each containing ID, name, and price. Finally, let's paste in our API token. I'm going to go to Settings, API Tokens, and I'm going to create a new API token, but you can reuse an existing one. Let me give it a name and a description. I need to make sure that my token type is full access. Read-only tokens are great in Strapi, but they only allow us to read data. If you have something like a blog, a read-only token is great for you because people will not be able to forge API requests and create data using a read-only token. But we're using an app and we need a full access token in order to allow us to create new data in Strapi. I'll save my API token, and then I need to copy it. Then I can paste it in here. And finally, I can copy this one into a terminal and see my output. As you can see, Strapi returned us a JSON object with data ID of 1 and data attributes equals to our attributes that we passed in here. Let's see if the order was actually created in the dashboard. If we were to go to Content Manager, Order, you can see that we have a new order created. One more thing that I forgot. It would be very nice for us not to have a draft publish system for our orders because we do not want to make a draft order in this case. Other than that, if we were to go to Content Manager Order, we can see that we have a new order with a name, a phone, and a list of menu items, and whether this order is done or not. Say I have prepared this salad and I'm going to check done as true, save it. I can even filter orders not to see the orders that were already done by clicking on Filters, Done is false. Click on Add Filter, and there we go, that order disappeared. If we were to remove a filter, this order is visible again. Let's see what we can save to Strapi right now. We need a name, a phone, and a list of items that the user added to their cart. We have a list of items the user added to their cart, but we don't have a name and a phone. In order to get a name and a phone, we will open a new alert asking the user for their name and a phone. I have started adding an alert in here. Let me show you what I've added so far. We have an order alert class, which is a stateful widget. We have a build method with an alert dialog. Alert dialog allows you to show an alert dialog. You can pass in a title, the title of your dialog, a content, the content of a dialog, and actions, the actions that your dialog can have. Title is going to be your name, and actions is going to be one elevated button which will have a text order on it. I've left on pressed empty for now. Then we need to have some content. For the content, I have chosen to have a form. A form usually looks like this. It's just a form widget with a key to access this form. You'll see why we need a key in a while. We have a child of column with 2 children of text form field. You need to set main exercise to min in here because by default a column will take as much space as it can get, which will result in our alert dialog taking the entire screen's height. Each of the children is a text form field with a label text of either a name or a phone, and then we can pass in a validator. A validator function is a function that will validate whichever value is entered in the text form field. For this, I'm using a notEmpty validator function, which I have right over here. It returns a string or null, and it takes in a string or null value. What this whole thing means is if we have a value and it is not null, we will get value.isEmpty, otherwise we will consider it true. If validator returns a null, it means that the field was validated and the field is correct. If a validator returns a string, this means that the field has an error and this error should be shown to the user. We'll pass in our non-empty validator here and here. And now let's try validating the form. I can use a form key, which is a global key with form state in it. Form state is a Flutter widget, which represents the state of a form. And since I passed a key into my form, I can see form key dot current state. I will assume that my current state is not null, as I have just passed a key in here. Dot validate. Calling validate will call validator on each of the text form fields. If one of the validators returns a string and not null, then one of the fields is considered invalid and then the whole form will be considered invalid. Valid is a boolean and it will return false. If the form is not valid, I will just exit and do nothing. How do we access the data the user entered into each of the text form fields? For this, we can use a text editing controller. Text editing controller helps us access the value that is stored inside of a text form field. We pass in a name controller to our name field and a phone controller to a phone field, and then we can use name controller.text to get the name that the user entered and phone controller.text to access the phone the user entered. Both name and phone are strings, and all we need to do now is to get them to our order page. Let's see what happens when I click on the order button. Nothing. This is because we need to show our alert dialog. In order to show the alert dialog, we have to call the showDialog method. Let me create a new function called createOrder. And since we're creating the order, let's make sure that our cart is not empty. And if it is, let's do nothing. I also need to pass a build context, and then we need to call showDialog. showDialog requires build context to be passed to it, and we need to pass the build context into our createOrder method. And then showDialog takes a builder, which takes in a context and returns an order alert in this case. If I were to save it and rerun it, click on order, we can now see our new dialog. We have our text view and we have two form text fields. We also have an order button. If we were to click on the order button, you can see that both of those fields contain errors, which is indicated by the error text in here. If we were to, for example, fill in a phone, and remember, we're only validating that each of these fields is an on-empty string, this phone string plus 0 space 834 would be a valid phone number. To validate the form once again, you can see that the error for the phone field is gone, but the error for the name field is still here. What we need to do now is to get a result from order alert into our order page. To achieve this, we need to await the show dialog. And in order to await something, we need to make the createOrder async. We still do not return a value from the order alert. If I were to go to the order alert, and if I were to go to this method, you can see that we return absolutely nothing. How would we return a value from an alert? Flutter treats alerts similar to pages. An alert is just another page. This means that on top of our order page, we have an order alert. An order alert is the last widget that was pushed to a navigation stack. In order to delete stuff from the navigation stack, we still have to use autorouter of context.pop. And as you can see, it asks us for a type T result. What this parameter does is it allows us to return data from the last page in the stack into the previous one. Let's add a map containing a name of name and a phone of phone. This way we will be able to return data from our alert dialog. If we were to go to create order, I can say string name is going to be res of name and string phone is going to be a response of phone. This result that we're getting from the showDialog method is going to be a map as we have returned it. Now we have all items to post to the server, so let's make an API request to create an order on the server. Let's go to repositories, menu items, .dart, and let's create a new method. I can just copy get menu item, call it createOrder. It will take in a few parameters, a required string name, a required string phone, and a required list of menu item data, menu items. And then we need to do.post to API/orders. We still need to keep our authorization token, but now we need to add a content type of application JSON. Strapi expects this content type in order to process your request correctly. We do not need any query parameters. However, we need a data. Data is going to be a map of data. Strapi expects our fields to be inside of the data field with a name of name, phone of phone, and finally data of data. We don't have a data variable yet, so let's create it. Our data variable is going to be a list of menu items.map, each of the menu items to a map of ID being element.id, price being element.price, and name being element.name. And finally, we do not need to pass any of the responses. We can just assume that if Strapi returned 200, it accepted our request and saved the data. Notice one last thing in here. We're passing in the name, the phone, and the data, but we're not passing in done anywhere. Strapi knows that if done is false, by default, set done to false if we did not specify it. Let's go back to the order and call menu items repository.createOrder. In the createOrder function, inside of the order page, we need to call menu items repository.createOrder. Our name is going to be the name that we already have, same with the phone, and the menu items is going to be items we have obtained from the cart. Let's wait for the API request to complete, and if it doesn't throw an error, let's clear the cart. Let's take a look at what we have so far. When the order is placed, we will check that the items is not empty. We will show a dialog asking the user for their name and phone. We will get their name and phone, and we will send it to our server. Let me add a salad to my cart, then go to cart, order. My name is going to be name, and my phone is going to be +000. Click on order, and let's check if we have it in our Strapi dashboard. We do. Here it is. This is an order of name 000 false. We haven't seen anything in the cart because I forgot to set state. A bit of a tip in here, check if the widget is mounted before we call set state. By the time that create order is completed, we do not know if the user is still in the app. Sending this request could take, say, a few seconds, and by the time the request is finished, the user might have left the app or scrolled away. Flutter will still continue our callback, but it will not be able to re-render the widget that is no longer on the screen. Let's show an alert saying thank you for your order to make the app feel a bit more complete. After we have cleared our cart repository, we can still re-render our widget. Then we can await show dialog with the same context and with the builder of our widget called thank you dialog. This is a widget that I have just added. What it does, it shows us an alert dialog with a text of thank you, your order has been placed, and with that text button of OK, which will just close alert dialog. Our builder requires a context, and after we've said thank you, it would be nice to send them back to the home screen. For this, I could use autorouter of context.pop. As you can see, Flutter shows us a warning not to use build context across async gaps. To fix it, once again, we need to check if our widget is mounted, and if it is, we can pop our order page from the navigation stack. The user will be back on the page they were on before going to cart. Let's test everything out once again. Let me add a salad, add an ice cream to my cart, then click on the cart, order. My name is going to be name2, and my phone is going to be +0001. Let me click on the order, and the app shows thank you for your order. If I were to click on OK, the app will wait for the show dialog to be dismissed, and then it will redirect me back to the page I was at. And tip that I've already showed you, if we were to go to our orders, we can see that we have an order for name and we have an order for name2. We can delete orders by clicking on the delete button. We can filter orders. For example, we can see orders that are only done. In this case, only this order is done. And that would be it for our app. Our app is now ready. We've learned how to create a menu in Strapi. We've learned how to create a list of orders. We've learned how to show each of the items details. And we've also learned how to create a cart and send orders back to the backend. If you would like some notes, consider checking us out on DollarBackend.com/blog or consider signing up with us on DollarBackend.com. See you next time. Goodbye.